Hello! It's been a little while since my last video. I just kind of wanted to do a quick run through slash build guide of the Crypt & Cry Warbringer that I've been playing in 0.5. I'll start off by saying that this is not like a super blasting build, it's not going to be really fast. It's not the strongest build, there's definitely even stronger versions of this build out there. Skadoosh and Josiah Yeet have both done versions on Gemling, one using Fortifying Cry, one using Infernal Cry. I'll link those in the description. If you don't like the look of this version, maybe one of those ones will be better for you. But what this build is very tanky, pretty cheap to set up, pretty simple to play, and very consistent. This was my second character of the league. I abandoned my league starter as soon as I hit maps, and this has done everything that I've wanted to do so far. There has not been a single piece of content that I've gone, damn, I can't do this on this build. 200% delirium, unstable breach farming, 4th Ascendancy trial carries in Trial of the Secomans, which is my most hated, pinnacle bosses, so on and so forth. It is very consistent and very easy to play. So, I mean, I did my own 4th Ascendancy at level 74, or 75 I think, and I didn't lose a single point of honour to Zorok without having to avoid any of his abilities, just because of how Guard works. Guard is a buff that we get from our main sort of damage skill, so it's both defensive and offensive, which is pretty cool. But I'll get a bit more into that in a second. So, with that being said, I'll go through the passive tree, I'll go through the skills, I'll go through the items, and a few tidbits on crafting some of the items as well. So we are a Warbringer. We take Warcaller's Bellow to make the Warcries explode corpses. This is just a good bit of extra clear. Ignore Warcry cooldowns means that you don't need Warcry cooldown recovery rate. Renly's Training gives you more base block chance from your shield. Turtle Charm makes it so that your maximum block chance is 75%. Now what this means is that your maximum block chance can't go up and it can't go down. It sets your maximum block chance to 75%. And then the last thing is Jade Heritage. Gain a stack of Jade every second. Stacks of Jade stack up to 10 times, give you 1% additional physical damage reduction per stack. And additional physical damage reduction is like at the end of the calculation, so this is just a flat 10% less physical damage taken. So, very good. And this also works for damage over time as well. Physical damage over time specifically, obviously. We take Relentless and Sturdy Metal for some armor, Defender's Resolve and Unstoppable Barrier for block chance, Polished Iron for armor and stun threshold based on the item armor we get, Blade Catcher for defend with 200% of armor against critical hits. This basically means that when you take a critical hit, your armor is effectively doubled against that hit. Beef for some strength. Vigilance for block chance. Like I said before, the +2 to maximum block chance will not affect you because of Turtle Charm. So this is literally just to get us block capped. Unbending for some life and some stun threshold. Cacophony for Warcry damage, Warcry area of effect. Heavy armor and made to last, both for sort of a bit of extra armor. Roaring Cries for a minimum of 10 power to our Warcries. This is just good for more consistent guards generation from Fortifying Cry. Giant's Blood lets us use a two-handed mace in one hand and a shield in the offhand. And basically the reason why we use this is because Fortifying Cry has the melee tag, so we can scale it with plus the level of all melee skills. This does come with the downside of triple attribute requirements of martial weapons. This is all martial weapons, not just two-handed maces. So this does mean you will need a bit of strength, depending on what weapon base you use. And then it also comes with the other downside of inherent life granted by strength is halved, so instead of getting +2 life per 1 strength, you get +1 life per 1 strength. Urgent Call for recover 2% of maximum life and mana when you use a Warcry, and so Warcry speed. Tempered Defenses for some armor, and armor applies to elemental damage. Just a little bit of clarification here for how that works is that the armor also applies to elemental damage. It's elemental damage taken, not elemental damage dealt. I know that a lot of newer players get kind of caught up on this because it is not very clearly worded, and I think they should change it to just add taken onto the end. Goring for increased maximum life. Leatherbound Gauntlets for +1 to evasion rating per 1 item armor on equipped gloves. Basically what this means is that if you have 200 armor on your gloves, this will give you 200 flat evasion rating that you can then use for iron reflexes to convert into armor. We take Gem Enthusiast for 5% increased maximum life if you have at least 10 red support gem socketed. This is easy, we do this naturally. 5% increased movement speed if you have at least 10 green support gem socketed. We can use just fodder support gems and skills, but I'll get more into that once we get to the skill section. Polymathy for attributes, again we will need a bit of strength for the weapon because of Giant's Blood. And with that, these small nodes here give a total of 12% reduced attribute requirements. If you get a good enough base that has a low strength requirement, you probably won't need these. Crystallized immunities for immune to ignite if a majority of your socket support gems are red, which they are. We come up here for a jewel socket for Undying Hate, specifically in tribute to Anaemia. The name that it is in tribute to will determine the keystone all the time. So if you get an Anaemia jewel, you will always get Sacrifice of Flesh. However, the number of souls is what determines these randomized passives here, but you don't, for this build, you don't need to care about that. All you need to care about is that it is in tribute to Anaemia. Now, you don't need this jewel. It is quite expensive. I haven't checked the price recently, but it was around about 10 divines when I bought it. But you don't need this. I literally forgot about this until I was level 93, and I cleared everything in the game up to this point. So, not necessary, but a good bit of extra power if you have the currency to buy it. But the reason we take this is for Sacrifice of Flesh. When taking damage from hits, 20% of life loss is prevented, and then 150% of that 20% is then lost over 4 seconds. If you have a lot of life recovery, this is just really good hit mitigation. Now, quickly, I'll show you, if you take the jewel out, this is Val Pact. We put the jewel in, it converts it into Sacrifice of Flesh. For the last few points, we come up here, we grab Blood Magic, which converts our skill mana costs into life costs because we have a lot of life recovery and not a lot of mana recovery. So this basically just solves all of your skill resource issues. Battle Fever for skill speed and increased physical damage. Deafening Cries for increased damage for each time you Warcry recently. Recently is the last 4 seconds. Guttural Roar for Warcry speed, Warcry area of effect, and Warcry's debility enemies. Debility is a debuff that is basically reduced movement speed and 10% reduced damage dealt. And then the last thing is Primal Hunger, which lets us regenerate 1 rage per second per 4 rage spent recently, but it makes our rage have no effect. Now normally rage only gives you more attack damage, but we don't benefit from that at all, so instead we can just use this for easy rage recovery and to fuel one of our support gems. The last thing I'll go through is quickly the jewels. So we have Block Chance, Warcry speed, Warcry damage. Block Chance, Warcry speed, Warcry damage. Then for unique jewels, Prism of Belief. These are ungodly expensive now, but they are not required. You could do basically everything in the game with just a little bit slower damage, or a little bit slower single target, really. I bought this for probably about 10 exalts. The +3 was 9 divines, and then I checked the price a couple of days into playing the build, because I wanted to kind of get to a point where I felt like, you know, it can actually clear end game stuff and it's not just good at the start. And then this shit shot up to like fucking 250, 300, 400 divines for the +3 and like 70 divines for the +2. So it's expensive. I have kind of been waiting for the price to come down before putting this video out, but it's not looking like it's going to happen anytime soon. But like I said, you do not need this, but it is a lot of power if you have the currency to buy it. And then obviously I explained the Undying Hate as well. So I think that covers the passive tree, so we'll go through the skills real quick here. The first skill is Rite of Restoration. We get this from the body armor we're using, Reverie. Basically, you put down a circle that gains up to 4 stages, and each stage gives you a percentage more armor, evasion, and energy shield, and a little bit of life regeneration as well. Now, this gains a stage when you spend a total of 35% of your maximum mana while in the circle, but because we have no mana, any skill cost is more than 35%, so one use of any skill will give you all 4 stages over a couple of seconds. And then in this we use increased cooldown recovery rate, more skill effect duration, second wind for an additional cooldown use, even though it does come with a downside of less cooldown recovery rate, and then Uhtred's Rite, which gives us the buff Overflowing Chalice for 1 second per 1 second of the skill's cooldown, and Overflowing Chalice gives us 30% increased recovery from Flasks, which is our entire source of life recovery basically. The next thing is Fortifying Cry. This is your main skill. This is what you're going to be using all the time. We use this, again, because it has the melee tag, so we can scale this with increased level of all melee skills, rather. This basically gives you guard per 5 enemy power, up to 20 power, and with Roaring Cries, the notable that gives us a minimum of 10 power, we gain 400 and something guard at the current level I've got the skill at. But in this, we use Paquette's Pact. This triggers the skill Twisted Pact based on the level of the skill gem that you have it in, and that's why we want to use Fortifying Cry to push up the levels as much as we can. There is a bug with this. You'll see this is level 36, whereas my Warcry is level 37, and I think the bug is that it doesn't count the +1 level from Corruption. So hopefully that gets fixed, but basically skills cost 10% of maximum life for each time they've been used or triggered in the last 4 seconds, up to a maximum of 30%. So the first time you use it, the second time you use it, you won't really notice, but if you keep spamming it, your life will disappear. So, but you don't use it that much anyway, because Twisted Pact inflicts 5 stacks of corrupted blood per use. So two Warcries is your maximum stacks, basically. Every time you apply a stack of corrupted blood, it refreshes the duration of all stacks of corrupted blood. So you Warcry twice, and then keep those topped up. Swift Affliction 2 for more non-ailment damage over time, because it is not an ailment, it's not bleeding. Brutality for 30% more physical damage, because it deals physical damage. Rage Scourge 2, this is why we use Primal Hunger. Support skills spend 10 rage if possible to deal 35% more damage. So we can basically use this to spend rage, to deal more damage, and then Primal Hunger lets us regenerate that rage back. And this spends rage for every single application of corrupted blood. You use this in a pack, you'll regenerate all of your rage back basically instantly, and you'll just watch your rage bar ping pong up and down. And then the last one is Physical Mastery, because again, we just want to get as many levels as possible, and Fortifying Cry does have the physical tag. The next thing we use is Seismic Cry. This is literally just to generate rage and also hit for exploit weakness. So we use Raging Cry to gain rage per power of enemies counted in range. Echoing Cry, so this lets us use Warcry once and then get 2 extra Warcries after that without having to cast it again. You just have to move 10 meters between uses, which you will always will, because once you have gotten your rage up, this is basically not necessary unless your rage falls off if you stop killing stuff. Exploit Weakness we use to consume Armor Break for Resonating Shield, and Mobility just so you don't have as much of a movement speed penalty while using Seismic Cry. The next one is Resonating Shield. We use this to break armor, because breaking armor allows us to apply Uruk's Smelting, which makes enemies take 5% increased physical damage permanently up to a maximum of 20% when you break their armor. But with that, we use Stern's Ferocity. This lets supported skills crush enemies, which reduces their physical damage reduction by 15%, so just more physical damage dealt. Uruk's Smelting, like I said before, when you break an enemy's armor, they permanently take 5% increased physical damage up to 20%. Steadfast 2 for more stun threshold while channeling. Rapid Attacks 2 for faster armor break. We use Leap Slam for Holy Descent, which makes Consecrated Ground when you land. Consecrated Ground is a ground effect that lets you regenerate 5% of your maximum life and also get 50% reduced curse effect whilst you're on it. Shocking Leap creates shocked ground when the skill critically hits. We can guarantee this with an offhand Quicholi, where this is a weapon that has 100% crit chance, so it's basically guaranteed, literally guaranteed. Persistent Ground 3 for increased duration of ground skills, and this also applies Suppressive Ground, which makes enemies have 30% less cooldown recovery rate, which means that a lot of boss skills actually have internal cooldowns. They may be like 15 seconds, 30 seconds, etc., and this means that they'll use them less. And then the last one is Encroaching Ground, where basically any ground surface created by the skill will gradually gain up to 100% increased area of effect over time. And then the last two is Scavenge Plating, because when we break armor, this gives us more armor, up to 10 stacks. This is another reason why we consume armor. Herbalism 2 for increased recovery from life flasks. Magma Barrier gives us increased block chance. This is literally just to get us block capped. And Herbalism 1 gives us increased recovery from life flasks again. So that covers the skills. And like I said before, we can literally just use fodder dexterity support gems to get up to the 10 required for for Gem Enthusiast. So, that covers that. Just a quick point now on the items. So, the main thing we use is Crown of the Victor. This is a very low level, I think it's level 5 requirement if you don't have it rune mastered. We use this for plus level to all skills because we lost the Vertex Cultivated mod for up to plus 4, so this is the best we'll get. The next unique we're using is Reverie. This gives us the Rite of Restoration skill that I talked about before. It gives us some armor and some energy shield. It gives us a small penalty to fire res, some chaos res, and it lets your life flasks apply their effect constantly, but they can't be used. It also does give you a less life flask recovery modifier, so you basically want to get this as low as you possibly can. Then for the rares, for rings it's just life, strength, resistances, same on the other ring. Then the amulet is plus the level of all melee skills, life and resistances if you can get them. This one here is literally all you need to farm for all your upgrades. And this costs about 40 exalts or something like that. So it really is not expensive. This is just me crafting the amulet and failing. You can get plus 4 by using attack catalysts or reaver catalysts, but they're super expensive, and you also need another bit of crafting that lets you go above 20% quality, which again it isn't too expensive, but that's because the catalysts are. So you don't need this, but if you've got the currency, then you can push this up to plus 5 with sanctification, which I failed. The next one is your gloves. It's basically just life, resistances, and plus the level of all melee skills. You can get a plus the level of all melee skills as a corruption, plus 1, but it is very rare, and I failed 5 or 6 corruptions and never even saw an enchantment. Never mind that specific one. But yeah, that just depends on if you feel like it's worth it. Boots are movement speed, armor, life, resistances, and armor applies to elemental damage. The belt is armor, life, flask, life recovery rate. This is really important. And then whatever resistance you have. You'll see here we've got 1648. If I take the belt off, you lose like 500 life recovery. So that mod is very important to get on your belt. Then we have, what's next? The shield is basically just armor, life, strength, additional physical damage reduction again, and then whatever resistances you need, and then an Idol of Grust for for a percentage of armor also applies to elemental damage. And then the last thing that we need to speak about here for equipment is the weapon. Now this took me a few times to try and craft it, or at least to sanctify it, because I am very unlucky, but for you do not need this. Exactly. Literally, I will show you right now what you need. So, with this weapon, the only thing that we care about on this is plus 5 to level all melee skills. You use an Omen of Dextral Necromancy to add a suffix on your next desecration, an Omen of the Liege to guarantee an Anaemia modifier. You use your Jawbone, you're guaranteed a suffix. You use an Omen of Sinistral Crystallization to make it so that your next Perfect or Corrupted Essence only removes prefixes. Then you use an Essence of Abrasion. Now you have damages extra physical damage, plus the level of all melee skills, and then when you go to the Well of Souls to reveal the Desecrated modifier, you're guaranteed the same 3 ones, and at which point you will take increased spirit reservation efficiency of skills. It doesn't matter what roll you get, the lowest roll is perfectly fine. It's literally the difference between like 4 spirits, so it really does not matter. And then that's literally your weapon craft. Anvil Maul is the cheapest base you will get. This craft will cost you probably around about maybe, I don't know, 60 to 80 exalts tops, and that's your weapon. And then if you really want to, you can try and sanctify it like this one to get plus 6. Hopefully you're luckier than I am. Now, as you can see, this has a strength requirement of 354, whereas mine has a strength requirement of 430 because I forgot to get a low strength base when I crafted this. So don't make the mistake that I did, because I do have to get a bit of extra strength because of it. Now, then for sockets on your gear, it is a Rune of Vitality in your weapon because you don't have a lot of options, a bit of extra strength from a Robust Rune. For all of your equipment, it's basically as many vision runes for increased life and mana recovery from Flasks as you can get. I messed up one of my items and borked my resist, so I have to have a resist one in here. You shouldn't have to. Maybe you can also get a corruption enchant that you like, plus spirit or a few things like that. Same again, vision runes in here, and then a rune of foundations for a bit of extra armor. Then again, vision runes and basically everything except for the shield, which I spoke about before, with the Idler Roost. Then, because we're using Reverie, you want the best life flask you can get. So, and that is this mod here that is increased life recovered and removes 50% of life recovered from mana when used. 1, we don't have mana, and 2, this doesn't actually apply enemy because you never use the flask. So this, with 20% quality, or as much quality as you can get, will be great. It makes a big difference. Then for charms, it's just, I use just this one for shock immunity and enemies having unlucky lightning damage during effect, and then a freeze charm as well. So one quick addendum about this stuff as well is that if you find one of these amulets that you really like, and it's a good price, but it doesn't have the right resistances, you can use these Fluxes that they added in this patch. Transforms all X resistance modifiers on an item to equivalent X resistance modifier. So for example, this one has lightning res. If I don't need lightning res, I can use a chilling or blazing or void one to get that relevant resistance. For example, this turns this into cold. This amulet here, another mod that you can sort of look for if you're really rich on your, because plus 3 melee skills is the most important, but if you want to spend a shitload of currency, you can also get this mod from either the Genesis tree or Altered Collarbones. The Genesis tree requires a shitload of luck. Altered Collarbones requires a shitload of currency for desecration crafting and stuff like that. But basically, when you hit an enemy, they gain Anaemia. Anaemia allows plus 3 corrupted blood debuffs to be inflicted, which is a lot more damage if you can get it. And on this actually has 3 separate elemental resistance rolls that I then converted into Chaos Res to get Chaos Res capped when I was using this before. And then the last thing I should probably talk about is if you come across an enemy with a lot of life regeneration, this build can feel significantly worse, so it can be worth carrying around a Megalomaniac Jewel with Punctured Lung. Punctured Lung is a notable that makes it so that when you fully armor break an enemy, they can no longer regenerate life. You won't have to use this often, but it's an option. And yeah, I think that basically covers it. If you try the build, let me know how it goes. If you have any questions at all about this build or the game or anything, just ask it in the comments and I'll answer as soon as possible. And yeah, I hope you enjoy, and I shall speak to you later on.